Viewer discretion is advised.
Through insane days and psychotic nights, as long as ignorance is in sight, I will come out of hiding and take over the hell. Welcome to the Psycho Realm. You all probably know by now, the new generation of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, right? The show premiered in October of 2010 and has become quite the phenomenon. From toys, merchandise, even the creation of bronies. And whether you like the show or not, you have to admit, its success is very impressive. But it raises the question, Lauren Foss is who developed the Hasbro My Little Pony property, which resulted in the series development. But why would she end up remaking a 1980s commercial toy when she was also creating her very own toy line, the Galaxy Girls? Maybe she was just nostalgic about her favorite childhood toy when she was little. But I think it was something much more. I read this news story a decade ago about 6 girls who all went to the same school and died on the same day, November 7th, 2004. I had forgotten about it, but it was only until I watched a few episodes of My Little Pony that I realized the main characters were surprisingly similar to the girls that had died. I went looking for that article, which I had saved on my computer for some damn reason. And when I read it, I realized that I was right. There was a definite connection between the show and the girls. The first girl was Samantha Gales, a shy girl whose classmates couldn't understand why. But they never knew that at home, Samantha was constantly abused by her mother and stepfather. Her mother had Samantha at the tender age of 15. And like a lot of irresponsible teens, she blamed Samantha for not being able to live the fun life she once had. This made Samantha self-conscious. And when her stepfather moved in, the neglect and abuse got worse because her stepfather never liked taking care of Samantha when her mother was away. So he'd lock her up in the basement, sometimes for the entire time her mother was gone. And when Samantha told her mother about this, her mother hit her and told her she was lying, all because she finally found happiness and she was trying to ruin it. And when her half-sister was born, the abuse and neglect got even worse. She was starved, forced to sleep outside at times, even beaten for no specific reason. And because she wore shabby clothes and had low self-esteem, she was often picked on at school. Her only friends were animals that she would rescue, which her family would make her get rid of. She committed suicide by overdosing. Samantha Gales is obviously the inspiration for Fluttershy. Next is Janice Walters. Janice was one of the popular girls. She was rich, smart, beautiful, and seemed to live the charmed life. However, her parents argued constantly and were only together for appearances. Janice was held up to a high standard, which made her a perfectionist. She wanted to be a designer and live in Paris, but her parents wanted to remain in Carolina and marry a proper man, one of good breeding and high income. For the most part, her parents ignored her. They were only concerned about appearing rich and of high social standing. But in reality, her mother married her father because of money. And since he had accumulated so much debt, they had been losing money fast. This is what got her interested in fashion initially. Since she started making her own fashionable clothes to maintain the appearance of wealth. She died in a car crash when her mother and father got into it over money while he was driving. Her neck was snapped on impact, and she died instantly. Janice is clearly the inspiration for rarity. Alexandra Matthews. Alex was a competitive girl. She always sought to be the best of the best, especially in sports, track in particular. Her father always wanted a boy, and since her mother was declared incapable of having another child, he decided to raise her as if she was his son. In the end, though, she loved her mother and father and was more than happy to play sports for him. She excelled at them even. This made her popular, and by the time she was in high school, was being sought out by athletic scouts from colleges all over the country. This made her try even harder. She had always wanted to compete in the Olympics. However, when she was 15, her mother, who had been told she could never have another child, had a son. After that, her parents didn't pay very much attention to her, which made her more determined to succeed. She ended up pushing herself so hard, she neglected her friends, her grades, and even her personal health. At one point, she became so desperate, she started taking steroids. What her and her family didn't know is that she had a minor heart condition that the steroids worsened. During a match, she collapsed because she was pushing herself so hard. A few days later, she died in the hospital due to a heart complication. Alexandra Matthews is clearly the inspiration for Rainbow Dash. Jamie Sanders. Jamie is clearly the inspiration for Applejack because she was a farm girl. But unlike Applejack, who ran a successful apple orchard, Jamie's farm was run down, and her family always struggled with money. So she'd often work odd jobs under the table to try and help support them. And since she was the second of many brothers and sisters, she and her older brother would take care of them. This meant she didn't have enough time to hang out with friends or take any extracurricular activities. She sometimes even didn't have enough time to do homework most nights. And like Applejack, who had a family in Manhattan, Jamie had an aunt who kept offering to send them money, but they were proud and always refused. That is until her father died of a heart attack in 2001. Her mother followed shortly after, having committed suicide when she couldn't handle the pressure of taking care of the kids. They were then taken in by their senile grandma, who was incapable of taking care of them. Jamie would then take on the responsibilities herself with her older brother to try to keep the family afloat. She died when she fell into a wood chipper. Catherine Jackson. Catherine probably has the saddest story of them all. She was a foster child that was moved from home to home because at age 5, her birth father killed her mother and himself in a fit of rage. She couldn't settle in a good home because earlier families would only take her in because they were only merely interested in the financial support adopting a child would bring, and would refuse to feed and even clothe her. Eventually, she would settle into a nice home with a good family, but old memories would still haunt her, breaking her fragile sanity into a million pieces. She would have nightmares of her mother screaming, bleeding, and her father screaming at her, claiming she was next. By the time she was in high school, she had completely snapped. She started to hallucinate and act out in class. Many of the kids and even teachers assumed she was merely hyperactive and was trying to be funny. She would often paint, draw, and write about fantastical things, and she would even dress in over-the-top clothing. All while her condition was getting worse and worse, the voices and images started to become more realistic and more demanding. She died when she jumped off of a building, claiming one of the voices in her head told her she could fly. Catherine Jackson is obviously the inspiration for Pinkie Pie. What makes this fact more chilling is that Lauren Faust originally designed Pinkie Pie to be a Pegasus, as you can see right here in early development sketches. And finally, we have Cynthia Little. Cynthia was held up to a high standard from a young age. Her older brother was always getting awards for academic and athletic achievement, and Cynthia was held up to the same high standard. She ended up neglecting other things of her life in order to make sure she got the best grades. For a while, this worked. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and bragged to their friends about not having just one genius child, but 2. That is, into a local private academy for the gifted started to become interested in her, among several other advanced students. She knew that this would be the best opportunity she could have to finally prove herself as the perfect child. But the pressure was high. She knew that there were limited spots for new students, and she knew that there would be a test and an essay required to get in. So she became a little desperate. She studied to the point where she would hardly eat and never sleep. As the test closed in, she panicked, and she opted to find an essay online to copy. And during the test, she resorted to cheating, where she was caught. and rejected by the school. This horrified her parents. She ended up sinking into a deep depression, and to save herself the shame of being the imperfect daughter in her mind, she hung herself. Cynthia Little is the inspiration for Twilight Sparkle. Now, you really might be wondering why Lauren Foss would be inspired to make such a sweet children's show inspired by such depressing events. Perhaps she felt some odd need to give the girls closure. Or perhaps she wanted to tell the girls' story and give them the happy ending the best way that she could. 'Cause think about it. Fluttershy is able to take care of animals she adores. Rarity is a successful designer with loving parents. Rainbow Dash is in fact a great athlete. Applejack runs a successful farm. Pinkie Pie is happy with not a care in the world. And Twilight Sparkle was accepted in an exclusive school. So maybe, just maybe, she was able to give the spirit of these girls the happy ending they always wanted. And me personally, I think they're happy.